How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?
Today we're diving into one of the most talked about speeches in recent years, Greta Thunberg's infamous How Dare You moment. We're going beyond the headlines to unpack Greta's speeches and the rhetoric and emotional performance that have captivated millions, but may be hiding some crucial gaps. Is it really about science or something else entirely?
I remember thinking that it was very strange that humans, who are an animal species among others, could be capable of changing the Earth's climate. Because if we were, and if it was really happening, we wouldn't be talking about anything else. As soon as you turn on the TV, everything would be about that. But no one ever talked about it.
Why does she speak in terms of we, as if she represents us all? And what exactly gets left out when she talks about solutions? Let's take a closer look at Greta's linguistic and behavioral tactics in a speech that keeps escalating, and not necessarily for the right reasons.
Greta, your first climate strike was a lonely event a little over a year ago, and in the intervening time you have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe, demanding action for climate change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you.
In mainstream media, it doesn't take much for the right kind of person, like Greta Thunberg, to be applauded.
But then you get a tweet from the president who basically was not a kind tweet. Do you ever think about, would you sit down with him to try to help him understand climate change?
I don't understand why I would do that.
Greta's speeches and interviews aren't about logos, as in delivering logically based arguments in a calm, collected fashion and inviting discussion. Instead, they lean heavily on pathos, emotion, anger, frustration, pity, sorrow. This emotional and largely performative approach is the exact opposite of what the scientific method is about. The very science Greta references, as if it's all as simple and settled as she makes it sound.
You have sparked the interest of millions, literally, of children around the globe.
So why did Greta spark such widespread interest? Primarily because the mainstream media, with its clear political and ideological leanings, chose to platform her. Political leaders followed suit, treating her not just as a concerned teenager, but as an authority.
What's your message to world leaders today?
Your voice is, I just have been wanting to meet you for so long. I think you're so amazing.
You've, this book here, as Phil said, you win the award for the heaviest book. I imagine it'll be essential reading for anyone attending COP27.
Because of this media and political support, she speaks in terms of we, as if representing a unified community, not just herself. The real fascination, though, has been less about Greta's ability to make arguments, let alone nuanced and multi-layered ones, and more about Greta herself. Her emotional delivery, her pathos-first approach, helped turn her into a symbol, even a kind of celebrity.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Again, what do we want?
Climate justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Climate justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
So she is a bit of a hero to many, especially you girls doing what you do. So did she live, and people say don't meet your heroes, did she live up to your expectations?
I think she really did. She seems so humble and so...
What do we want?
Another word for humble,
When
not
do we
full of
want
herself.
it?
She's doing this for the message. It's not about ego at all. She has no interest in the press. She has no interest in being this leader.
But sure, let's pretend it was all just a spontaneous grassroots spark.
You have sparked the interest.
I'm sure the arguments will be as nuanced and profound as the coverage.
My message is that we'll be watching you.
8 words. That's how much of a 5-minute speech wasn't scripted. The rest, a polished performance, a study in how modern activists and politicians use emotion to persuade. So let's break it down piece by piece, not just what's said, but how it's said, and why it lands the way it does.
We'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
This is Greta's way of framing herself as a reluctant martyr, not an attention seeker. She's not here because she wants to be. She's here because she has to be. Because as she puts it, people come to her for hope.
For hope?
Who exactly are these people? And what does hope even mean in this context? Because when you listen to Greta, hope sounds a lot like drastic change. How is that going to affect people's everyday lives?
The governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action. And as we don't have the technological solutions that alone will do anything even close to that, that means we will have to fundamentally change our society.
Actually, we do know a bit about how the plans of Greta and her fans will affect people's lives.
You can always have these big corporations that put pressures on the consumers to make changes in their lives, but individually we need systemic change. We need to have it like as a top-down approach. So we need to have things put in place so it makes it easier for consumers to make these informed decisions, because it ultimately it is a privilege, you know, to be able to make these decisions, spend a little bit more money on having like sustainable makeup wipes and you can always have these big corporations that put pressures on the consumers.
Yes, we can always have that, especially with so many people already struggling to make ends meet. If only they just spend a little bit more money, so that the politicians can spend it for them, making groceries even more expensive than they already are. The framing is cunning. By saying they come to her, she shuts down objections before they're even raised. Objections like, why is she here? Why should we listen to her? It paints her as a selfless fighter, whether or not that image holds up. And it doesn't hold up, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But there's a difference between brand identity, how someone wants to be perceived, and brand image, how they're actually perceived. Take this line, I should be back in school.
I should be back in school.
It's built to deflect one of the most common criticisms. She's a kid, why isn't she in school? So she leans into it. She's not skipping school, she's sacrificing it. Again, the selfless fighter. But in reality, Greta has gone out of her way to stay out of school and has encouraged others to do the same.
She has no interest in the press, she has no interest in being this leader. You know, I think she wants to be a striker like anyone else.
A striker like anyone else? Right, just a regular kid with a global media presence, a UN speech and a PR machine. By the way, since when has becoming a striker been something you strive for? The teachers must be thrilled.
You have stolen my dreams.
Which dreams exactly? And who's the you Greta keeps scolding so passionately? Her emotional performance conveniently shifts attention away from the intentional vagueness, generalizations, and oversimplifications. Her powerful delivery hides an astonishing lack of detail.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you!
She claims that the enemy, the oversimplified, faceless you, has stolen her dreams and childhood. which is about as serious a grievance as one can make. So when she says she's one of the lucky ones, it underscores just how evil the antagonist is meant to appear. By emphasizing the antagonist, she implicitly highlights her own role as the protagonist in this narrative, in this us versus them discourse. This prominent self-serving rhetoric runs throughout the speech, continuing here without change. There's no mention of who exactly is suffering, or how their suffering connects to what she's saying or proposing. No consideration of whether this collapse might be tied to other issues. In other words, this is the opposite of a well-argued point, the opposite of science, and yet the world's most prominent leaders applaud it. What does that say about our leaders? The very leaders Greta positions herself against, yet who keep inviting her to their performative summits and keep promoting her in mainstream media. Intentional vagueness gives politicians and so-called activists leeway, the freedom to avoid making specific and detailed arguments that could be more easily challenged. This is why it's especially important to be aware of Greta's intentional vagueness, given the strong ideological nature of her worldview and rhetoric, rather than a scientific one. Watch this.
And the climate crisis is, of course, only a symptom of a much larger crisis. A sustainability crisis, a social crisis, a crisis of inequality that dates back to colonialism and beyond. A crisis based on the idea that some people are worth more than others and therefore have the right to exploit and steal other people's land and resources. And it is very naive to believe that we can solve this crisis without confronting the roots of it. Of course, and it is very naive.
Of course, and naive, she says, assertively, appealing to an assumed shared understanding that the connection between the crisis and the past is simple and one-dimensional. This shared knowledge technique serves to shut down objections, implying there's no other way to see it than the speaker's way, no matter how oversimplified and sometimes inaccurate the speaker's connections between past and present events are. Never mind that both large and small companies create jobs, enabling people to survive. The verb steal and the presupposition that the antagonist believes some lives are worth more than others underscore the ideological nature of her worldview. These assumptions are highly disputable, far from objective science. Yet Greta repeats this narrative verbatim in her speeches, a fact revealed by her own self-correction.
Crises based on the idea that some people are worth more than others and therefore have the right to steal others, to exploit others and to steal their land and resources. Right to steal others, to exploit others.
And all you can talk about is money.
Well, they talk about money because people's everyday lives depend on it. So what are Greta's economic plans to make sure people can keep living their lives? Why don't we ever hear about those? It's quite impressive how Greta balances crying with big words from her script, a likely sign she's not as emotional as she wants us to believe.
And fairy tales of eternal economic growth.
As always with speeches that cast the speaker as a selfless fighter, it turns out to be just another self-aggrandizing stepping stone, a chance to scold the antagonist while elevating their own moral standing. Watch this.
And you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us. But the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you. We will not let you get away with this. Right here, right now, is where we draw the line. The world is waking up, and change is coming whether you like it or not.
That doesn't sound totalitarian at all. Sounds like such a nice, free society where people can make decisions in line with their own worldview. Wait, if Greta ever actually outlined her plans in detail, I suspect a lot of people wouldn't want to be part of the us she keeps monopolizing. as if she's been appointed to speak on behalf of people whose lives she wants to fundamentally change.
We will have to fundamentally change our society.
You can always have these big corporations that put pressures on the consumers.
And you are still not mature enough.
Branding herself as mature in a room full of adults. The sense of self-importance is intact. I can't wait for Greta to substantiate her economic plans. Let's see if we're lucky to hear about them next.
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight. You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Yes, why didn't people clap right away? How dare they?
And that I refuse to believe.
So she claims that anyone who doesn't act according to the crystal clear science, which she still hasn't substantiated, must be evil or complicit. But then she says she refuses to believe they're truly evil, acting indulgent, as if she's the bigger person for giving them the benefit of the doubt. She's the one implying that they are evil, yet rejects the very accusations she's indirectly making. This is cunning, self-serving rhetoric, making harsh accusations while softening them to appear magnanimous. It also highlights the role Greta happily assumes, judge of what's good and evil, using a rhetorical shortcut that paints dissenters as morally wrong without offering any specifics. In that regard, crystal clear is a handy adjective speakers use to make it sound like there's no other way to see things but their way. After all, you wouldn't want to be one of the evil ones, challenging something that's supposedly crystal clear, right?
How dare you continue to look away?
How dare you continue to question me, live your lives and want an open discussion, more like it. Conveniently, she still doesn't explain how the solutions needed will affect people's lives, perhaps because that would shatter her us versus them narrative and make people reluctant to join her we. No, let's instead focus on how popular she is, so no one dares to disagree with her agenda.
And now over 11 million people, because of you, have been striking because of this. 11 million people. I mean, I guess it shows you what one voice can do, right? It shows you the power that you have.
Yes, it really does. And
she has no interest in the press. She has no interest in being this leader.
Applause makes it clear to viewers who they're supposed to see as the good guys. But so what if you get millions of people to do something? History shows us that millions can be led, and not always toward good. Just because many people follow doesn't make it true or right. Yet on this show and many others, audiences are encouraged to applaud and marvel at things like sheer numbers. It's a shallow, superficial way of seeing the world that doesn't bring anyone any closer to the truth or the real details behind what's being celebrated.
But no matter how sad and angry I am,
Greta's revealing her pathos tactic here, whether she means to or not. She shows how people who don't rely solely on the facts of the case feel the need to draw attention to themselves, to how they appear, like being sad or angry, just like Greta. This unintentionally casts doubt on the depth and complexity of their worldview.
because if you really understood the situation,
presupposing that she understands the situation perfectly, people just need to take her word for it. What's the problem in that? After all, she's special, right?
You say that your Asperger's is a gift.
In this society, everyone is the same, everyone thinks the same, and then I think it is a gift to be different. In a crisis like this, we need to think outside the box. We need people who think differently.
Because as we all know, people who think differently are automatically right and don't need to explain themselves. There's a real irony in celebrating Greta for thinking differently, while voices who actually think differently on this issue are routinely ignored or outright shut out by mainstream media.
Because if you really understood the situation,
there's nothing like a speech that blends a strong sense of self-importance with self-serving rhetoric. But wait, Greta's about to mention numbers. Surely that means she's being strictly scientific now, right? No, I'll explain after this.
the popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences.
In political rhetoric, it's well known that numbers are often used to authenticate the speaker's narrative. They impress, they shock, and most importantly, they give the impression that the speaker is competent and authoritative. But here's the thing about numbers. They're often ambiguous. They depend on a range of independent variables and can be interpreted in very different ways. So what do speakers tend to do? They present the numbers in the way that best supports their cause. Numbers are frequently used to tell stories of decline and create the illusion that a very complex and ambiguous phenomenon is simple, countable, and precisely defined. Greta's nightmare scenarios rest on sources she doesn't specify, presuppositions she doesn't define, and intermediate results the audience never gets to hear. In other words, they're claims, the same kind politicians often use in debates to sound assertive and competent, without having to explain the details. And the format works perfectly in her favor. A carefully staged, one-way monologue, where no one can interrupt or ask follow-up questions. No one gets to challenge what her plans would mean for the average person, what exactly she means by beyond human control, or how she substantiates any of it. Science has never been about throwing out a bunch of numbers in an accusatory tone. On the contrary, doing so signals that you're not open to discussion, which doesn't exactly make your viewpoint look strong. Once again, she turns to ideological buzzwords.
Equity and climate justice. Equity.
Fluffy, vague terms like these help ensure Greta will always stay relevant, because they define goals that can never truly be reached. By invoking equity and justice, she can always claim that the system isn't equal enough or just enough, no matter how many initiatives politicians introduce. Because in that mindset, there's always room to put more pressure on consumers.
You can always have these big corporations that put pressures on the consumers.
And always a reason to pass more laws that restrict people's everyday lives, under the cover of nice-sounding platitudes like equity, justice, inclusion and representation. In the end, Greta's speech isn't about science, it's about emotions and positioning. Numbers are thrown around without sufficient context, sweeping claims are made without proof, and ideological buzzwords keep the monologue moving, but she never actually discloses what her plans would mean for the average person. What's left is a carefully crafted performance that shuts down debate and paints anyone who disagrees as morally wrong. So it's worth asking, what exactly are we endorsing when we applaud moments like this?
And
Yep.
People seem to see me as an angry teenager who condemns every individual's behavior, which is kind of funny to me.
And you're not that person?
No.
No, of course not.
Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil.
Kind of late to start acting easygoing and innocent, especially when you've just said this.
Donald Trump commented about you being sort of an ashdod. He said you're an angry young woman who needs anger management. What would you
What did he say? I have no connection to anything, so I don't know what's happened.
Basically, he said that he said he was reacting to what has been said about Israel capturing you. He said that Greta Thunberg is, I quote, a young angry woman. She needs anger management sessions.
Well, I think the world needs a lot of more young, angry women, to be honest.
People seem to see me as an angry teenager.
And you're not that person.
No.
Well, I think the world needs a lot of more young, angry women, to be honest.
So is she angry or not? Greta invokes group identity rhetoric.
Well, I think the world needs a lot of more young, angry women.
But something tells me she's only interested in hearing from women who are angry about the same things she is. I don't know why. Maybe it has something to do with her habit of implying that those who disagree are evil or support evil. That's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.
And change is coming whether you like it or not. Thank you.